very much. And thank you very much for having me. Real pleasure, real pleasure. And why am I here? It's apprentice time, isn't it? So I'm really here to talk about the apprentice. Is it sibilant? Where's my friend from the audio department? Is it sufficiently unsibilant? No. Perfect. All right. The apprentice. And the first question that everybody seems to ask me is, oh, that must be a lot of fun working on The Apprentice. Such fun. I'm going to tell you that for the elderly, it's an absolute bloody nightmare. Trailing around London after those characters, writing down everything they say, and then reporting back. It's difficult. It's a 53-day trot without a day off. It's very tough. But there are times when you might run into somebody whom you would not, in the normal course of events, run into. And it was on one such event years ago, and I'm staggered at the level of interest in The Apprentice, which is fantastic. Last night, apparently, my Lord Sugar, who's on his bicycle somewhere in Spain, tells me that 6.75 million people watched it, and by the end of the week they'll have consolidated the figures up to more than 10 million, which is a fantastic show. So, you know, I'm delighted that it's so big, because it means that most of you have sort of heard of it, and some of you may even have watched it. But anyway, it was a few years ago, we ran a fairground in the grounds of the Royal Army Medical Corps, and it was an event for charity. I think it was for Comic Relief. Apprentice does Comic Relief. And a bloke waddled up to me, very, very small, but had a huge head. Very disproportionate head. And he had big doleful eyes. He looked a miserable sort of fella. And he said to me, I watched that programme you don't do a bad job. It was Clement Freud. Do you remember the bloke? And I remember he used to do dog food. And I thought to myself, I'm going to approach this one very, very carefully, because he had a reputation of being pretty acerbic and quite sort of cruel, really. Looked cruel. And I said to Clement, I take that as a huge compliment coming from you, grandson of Sigmund Freud, brother of Lucian Freud. I take that as a great compliment, because, you see, I'm a complete fraud. And he looked at me and he curled his lip in derision. He said, no. He said, no. He said, I am a complete Freud. And with that, he walked away. I'll tell you that story. True story. I'll tell you that story because it's true, because I am a fraud. Absolute fraud. I got dragged into this thing without any training or talent or anything else. And there's nothing that I do on that show, or Karen, or Margaret, that anybody in this room, any Tom, Dick or Harry in this room couldn't do just as well. Not complicated. But I got the job, got a contract to the end of the next year, pays a fortune. So before you all rush off right into the BBC, say that Nick Brewer bloke says it's easy, can I do it? The answer is no. You can't do it. So The Apprentice, my word, what a funny old business it is. But let's roll back the clock. How did I get involved with this? And because you're an electronics firm, I wanted to talk to you about Amstrad, which was sort of an electronics firm. And don't be unkind. And I got a call way back in '83 from a guy called Malcolm Miller, who's a sales director, marketing director of Amstrad. He said, I am from Amstrad. You've heard of us, of course. And I lied. I said, yes. Oh. This was 3 years after they'd floated, when they were in the very cheap end of the hi-fi market. Remember that? Very, as Sugar used to say, listen, mate, if people are waiting to hear the triangle in the third movement of Miles 8, they're out of bloody luck, he said. But my stuff is for the truck driver and his wife. Anyway, Malcolm said, will you come and see us? I said, where are you? He said, Tottenham. I said, well, coming to the West End is more fun. He said, no, we have to stay at our desks from 9 in the morning till 6 at night. We're not allowed to leave, so you better come and see us. Went to see him. He said, look, we're in the hi-fi market. We're going into the computer market. It's dominated in those days. This is '83 by Atari. Remember them? Commodore. Sinclair. Remember him? And we want to get in on this home computer games market. And we're going to produce a computer. And it's going to be called CPC 464. Sexy name. But what's going to be different is that we're going to bundle it with a monitor. Nobody else was doing that. Do you remember? It was a system unit in Commodore, Atari, and Sinclair that you plugged into Dad's television. And he got thinking when he got back, and you had to unplug it so he could watch Coronation Street. But we're going to give them a monitor. And that's sort of sugar stinking, bundle it with a monitor. And so this would have been, I think, I don't know when this was. This was about April, I think. So I said, well, that's very interesting. Yes. He said, well, look, go away and tell us how you plan to launch this very important launch for us. We're investing a lot of money. So I went back to the office and forgot all about it. Very rude, very unprofessional. I was very busy at the time. I had my own PR company. I had lots of clients. I was very busy. And frankly, I didn't know anything about electronics and computers at all. And I was sort of overwhelmed by other stuff. And my secretary kept saying, would you get down to see Malcolm Miller? He's getting very irritated. And she said, and if you can't come up with an idea, you better go and apologise to him. Quite tough, she was. So I said, you're quite right, it's very unprofessional. So I jumped in a cab, went back to Garman Road in Tottenham to admit that I had got no ideas at all. And on the way in the cab, I suddenly thought, wow, come on. It's a games computer for children, little kids, and it's got sound and colour and all the other sort of, functions, I suppose, of games. Of a computer in those days. If I could get lots of little children, I could find a 7-year-old kid called Archimedes, we could demonstrate the mathematical functions. Or a little boy called Shakespeare, word processing. What about a little girl called Ravel, for music, for sound, and all the rest of it? By the time I got there, down to Garman Road, I had the whole thing mapped out. I said, Malcolm, I've been thinking long and hard about your problem. It's a terrible thing. That was the only bit of brilliance I've ever had in 40 years, actually. Anyway, but I had another one. I'll come on to that later on. Anyway, he said, good idea. Do it. So we hired the Great Hall of Westminster School, which is just off Parliament Square. We had all the retailers there. We had the city there, the analysts there. We had the press there. And it was a big success. I hadn't met Sugar by this. I'd seen a sort of a beard peering round the door at Garman Road and then withdrawing, because he's very nosy like that. I hadn't met him. Anyway, he, at the end of the presentation, he made a little speech. And as he left the presentation, I was standing there, and he grunted at me. And somebody said, my God, they said, you had a grunt. I said, is that good? They said, that's fantastic. To get a grunt within 3 months is exceptional, really. And to get it on the first day is fantastic. So he said, you're in. And I sort of was in, but I'm still in. Don't pay me anymore, but anyway, so began a wonderful, extraordinary career with this great businessman, actually, and wonderful character. And it was a sort of a carousel I clung on. I didn't know what I was doing, and when I did know what I was doing, I wasn't altogether sure why I was doing it. But it was exciting, and if, like me, you like the sort of smell of cordite in your nostril, sound of gunfire, he's your man, because he's always suing somebody, he's about to sue somebody, he's finished suing, so he's buying something, selling something. Great stuff. And then he said to me, he said, we're going into the word processing market. Now, in those days, word processors cost a fortune, and I'd in fact just spent 13,000 quid on a Canadian machine called Wordplex to equip my office. And I got summoned to discuss what we were going to do about this new thing called Joyce, which was named after his long-suffering secretary, poor girl. I'm not sure that she's still alive, actually. I'm not suggesting that he killed her. Stressful sort of job. And Joyce, this computer, was costing 399 quid. I say, you told me, I've just spent 13,000 quid. And it was a huge, it killed the typewriter market. Who remembers the IBM golf ball typewriters? They cost 1,000 quid. Do you remember those things? You couldn't lift them up, they were so heavy. And here was this thing for 399. It was extraordinary. So the company was roaring away. They had opened all sorts of subsidiaries and licensing deals right across Europe. France, huge success with the games machine. The company was roaring away. I think by this time it was turning over 800 million a year, maybe. It was capitalized about 1.6. It was a billion. It was going great guns. He said, now we're going into the IBM PC clone market. I said, right. So we launched this thing at the QE2 Conference Centre in Parliament Square, which was a big government building. We shipped in all these people from overseas now, because we're now an overseas company, darling of the city. I think we were in the FTSE 100. I mean, it really was boom. And sugar was the darling of the city. And we brought them all in, and we showed them what the IBM would do, which had been launched, I think, in '82. Did all these things, cost £2,000, and then what about Siemens? Yeah, they did exactly the same as the IBM. Why? Because they were a clone. What did they cost? £2,000. And so next door, what about Olivetti? We lined them all up, we had pictures of them, their performance. And what about the Amstrad? Reveal, exactly the same as all the others. Why? Because it was a clone, and 399. The world went mad. We had 36% of the European PC market within 2 years. This was big time. But we hadn't really got into the corporate market. And I went out to Brentwood. I almost sort of lived at the office by this time because I was a bit bored of all my clients. Mass spectrometers, photocopying machines, who cares? Anyway, I went out to the office one day and he's leaning against the door jamb in tears. A very rare sight. I said, what's wrong then? He said, I don't know, that's the problem. We're in deep trouble. The PC 2000 range that we've launched to go into the corporate market, to put into Shell, to put into the, the Treasury, to put into government and the rest of it, they're failing. And we don't know what the problem is. We don't know. And there was a big meeting that people came in from overseas and said, what are we going to do? Do we recall, or do we try and fudge it and get a fix? Bring them in and then send them out again. And we did the honest thing and we recalled. And of course, Nixdorf and IBM and Olivetti and all the boys jumped all over our head and killed us. We were out of the PC market, essentially. He still got his Vigeland company, which supplied the educational market, but not as pure IBM. They put in, not as pure PCs, but they put in all the software and ducting and all the installation stuff. But we were out of it. It was a nightmare, terrible time. They were sued eventually. Let me just tell you that the extraordinary thing, it's less than what people really suppose, two big American component suppliers, Seagate and Western Digital, both supplied faulty hard disk drive controllers. Now, who would have thought that you would get dodgy components from two companies? I mean, it's sort of bizarre. We sued Western Digital in California and don't bother. Sued Seagate in London, won I think 98 million plus interest, but it sort of didn't cope because it could have been huge. There you go. Now what? Because one door slams in your face and squashes your nose, another one creaks open, and that one that creaked open was a phone call which was taken by Alan's long-suffering new secretary. She wasn't eating those huge cheese buns of hers. Was from Murdoch. She said, "Oh, Alan, I've got Rupert Murdoch on the phone." And Alan said, "And I suppose he says he was at school with me?" She said, "No, he owns News International." But the fact he didn't know who he was sort of tells you something interesting about him, because he has these huge oceans of ignorance where it doesn't matter. You with me? But where it matters, he's mustard. And as an example, once I flew to Madrid. He had just bought the Spanish agent, was called Indescompi. He had bought the company. It was a Spanish wholly owned subsidiary. And we flew out there on Sunday, and he said, very odd, he said, that I'm going out to give Jose Luis Dominguez about, I don't know, let's call it 50 million quid, or whatever it was. And he can't even bother to meet us at the airport. I said, well, it's a Sunday. He said, so? I said, well, Spain's a Catholic country, and it may well be that he's taken his family to Mass. He said, right, he said, Catholic. He said they're Christians, right? Now the point is, we can all laugh, but the point is, it doesn't matter. He's not interested. But if you asked him what the DRAM price was on the Rotterdam spot market at 4:30 on Thursday, he'd tell you to 15 decimal points, because it matters. So what matters, he knows. And what doesn't matter, he doesn't care about. And if it suddenly does matter, he'll learn it backwards in 30 seconds, because he's that bright. But anyway, there we are. So he goes to see Rupert Murdoch, having, learnt that he actually owns quite a lot. And he said, Murdoch said, now look, we've got this big rocket squatting uneasily on a launch pad in French Guiana. And on top of it, there's a satellite called an Astra satellite. And that's going to shoot a satellite over Zaire, where it'll sit there, and it'll sort of propel, it'll plant a footprint over Europe, as the civilians. And it'll put this footprint over Europe, and that'll be Sky Television. He said, what's that got to do with me? He says, because you're going to make the dishes and the set-top boxes. He said, yeah, that sounds all right. How much do you want? He said, I want about 100,000 a month. This would have been about September of '88, I think, and it's to be launched in about March '89. How much? And that's about £199, no more. Landed in my warehouses for distribution. So he goes back to the office, speaks to his poor technical director. Where's your technical director? He's not sure. Oh, there he is. You'll enjoy this. So he said, Bob, he said, we're going into the satellite market. And Bob burst into tears. He said, we've only just got the bloody PC market. What do we know about that? It can't be very complicated. It can't be complicated. Now, be brave. So he said, get in the people that make the dishes. Those big ones on top of embassies. So he got them in, and they said that we want dishes. We want about 100,000 a month. Not big ones. We don't need them. We want little ones, about a metre. Well, very complicated. Curvature of the steel was very, very important. Tensile strength and all this sort of stuff. And the low noise block has got to be such and such an angle to it. How much? 80 quid. Not having it. So he threw them out. And he said, look, Bob, it's not correct. He said, get in the people that make the dustbin lids. Because they're about the right shape. That's right. And that's exactly what he did. But they were quite expensive. They were about 13 quid or whatever it was. So he threw them out, and he brought in a firm from Birmingham called Concentric who made hubcaps. Drove them down on price, got them boxed and landed for about 3 quid. Because that's the way he thinks. What's complicated? Why do you have to listen to these gurus? When actually, if you really think about it, it's not that complicated. And so they went into the satellite market, which was a fantastic, saved the company in many ways. Saved the company. Saved the company. And his greatest sadness was because he gave Murdoch, do you remember in those days, Murdoch was fighting Tim Simmons-Gooding for British satellite broadcasting. They were killing each other. They were throwing hundreds of millions of pounds away. It was ridiculous fighting each other. And Sugar gave him, in fact, News International, the whole shebang, was up for grabs, could have gone down. Might have lost the ranch. And Sugar gave him credit, long-term credit, on something shit. And he said, if only I'd asked for a quid an installation a month, be getting in, how many homes? 10 million homes now. That's 10 million homes. But he didn't. So, satellite was a great success, and for for a long time there were solar supplies, and then eventually at the end of it all, because Alan had really saved Murdoch's bacon to a great extent, and had delivered on time, and to cost. When Alan wanted out, he rang Murdoch and said, hey, why don't you want my company? Buy my company. And Sky bought Amstrad. And he rang Murdoch and said, thanks very much, mate. And Murdoch said, no, thank you. That's a good deal. 125 million. But it was great stuff. So that was that. Satellite's roaming on. And he rings me one day, he said, tomorrow we buy Tottenham Hotspur. Have you told the wife and the family? He said, don't worry, you leave that with me. And we went into 10 years of absolute misery. I suppose this house is packed with cherry vegetables now. Anyway, 10 years of absolute misery. It was a bitter fight, it was a ghastly fight, it was a damaging fight for everybody. He won in the end, but it was a real war of attrition. And he made 20 million. That's not why I went in. But He did a good job for Tottenham, actually, which in those days, of course, was in hot to Barclays Bank for 11 million. Of course, 11 million quid, caretaker worked, some kid in the junior squad gets 11 million quid a year. But in those days, it was a lot of money. And I was with at the final closing deal, because all merchant bankers only consider their, worth their soul if they conclude the deal at 4 in the morning. Because it's what matches stuff. Let's have a hamburger. Yeah. And in the middle of the night, Maxwell rings up. He said, I want to be part of this. Tottenham wants 2 sugar daddies. So he told him, Alan said, off you go, this is my deal. And there's a kerfuffle in the hall. And a squad of merchant bankers from Hill Samuel, which was Maxwell's bank, had burst in to try and interrupt the deal. And there was a young merchant banker from Hansbackers, our bank, who said, gentlemen, what a surprise, come. And he ushered them into an office and locked them in. Brilliant. He was only a young New Zealander, brilliant. And then their lawyers tried to get in, but we had warned security by this time. Anyway, what a miserable time it all was. But let's pass over the Tottenham years. People spitting at him in the street, people breaking into his house, scratching obscenities on his car. It was just horrible. And people, of course, football fans, I exclude you from such a thing, but they had no grasp of the finances. If they said, we're playing Arsenal on Saturday, blimey. Now, if we could just buy Ronaldo and Messi or whatever his name is, and a few others, to beat the Arsenal on Saturday, the fact that we go bust on Monday is irrelevant. We don't care, as long as we beat Arsenal. And this sort of craziness he was trying to put a stop to. Anyway, as you went with 20. What was I doing meanwhile? Plowing on with the business, it was fine. But I'd always said to myself, get out when you're 55, you're no good at it anyway. It's a young person's business, and frankly, women are taking over. So I've it was true, actually. I sort of found somebody to buy the company, which actually was 48 women and 2 blokes. Anyway, I sold it to them. No more leases to worry about, no more staff wanting a new car, none of that stuff. And I thought, I'm out of it. So I told Sugar I was selling it. He said, well, you can stay on with me. This is what we just freelance, you work for me. And I had another client who I'd acted for 20 odd years, which is His Highness the Aga Khan, the secretary of His Highness the Aga Khan, which is based in Paris. And I'd worked for them for 20 odd years. And they said, yeah, you can stay with us. So I had a wonderful, wonderful time roaming the world with a phone and a computer. And it was brilliant. There I was. I had a Jewish businessman on one hand, an imam of a sect or branch of Islam on the other, and as an Anglo-Irish Catholic, I thought it was actually perfect. We're only missing the Buddhists. Anyway, it was brilliant stuff. And then I was 60 in 2004, and I said, I'm out of here. I've got the Aga Khan about 5. Shook us over. If you must go. I don't believe it. It's not working. Threw a surprise party for me, and I cleared off. This was in February 2004. I happened to be in London the following month, and he rings out. He said, where are you? I said, I'm in London. He said, well, get a pencil and get up to the Dorchester at 3 o'clock. I need to talk to you. Brisk, quite sort of. It was a pain, but you're still on the payroll. Just don't get any checks. And I got up there. He said, now look, unlike me, you don't have a house in Florida. And therefore, it's very unlikely that you will know about a program in the States called The Apprentice, which is run by Donald Trump, and furthermore, the BBC has got the rights to run it in the UK, and I want to be the Donald Trump. Because when you did work for me, he said in a sort of accusing sort of tone, you ran a program at the invitation of Gordon Brown when he was making such a masterly display at the Treasury, with his friend Ed Balls, God help us all, and whereby I travelled all over the country speaking to young people about business, the importance of business, to students and school children, young people who think that business people are rotters, boring, yeah, and generally we don't have any do business. And I spent a long time, he said, trying to convert people. If I get this job on The Apprentice, I'll be able to talk to lots and lots of young people on television, and I won't have to get in a plane at my own bloody cost and go to Strathclyde to speak to 30 people, which has been a waste of time for so many years. And in a few minutes' time, the producer of this programme is going to come stalking through the door. His name is Peter Moore. We've got to, absolutely persuade him that I'm the right bloke to do The Apprentice. Well, the truth of the matter is, of course, he was not the right person to do The Apprentice, because he was yesterday's man by a long, long way. This is 2004. His heyday was late 80s. Then he had all the football business, which made him very unpopular. And in comes Peter Moore. We had a very unhappy meeting, eating cake in the dark, And off he went. And we all agreed to meet at some stage in the future. And then I said, this was my second piece of brilliance. I said, look, the thing is, from what you've told me about The Apprentice, it's all about glamour, power, apartments that look like the inside of a Ferrero Rocher box, and fat jets and all this sort of stuff. So what you've got to do, if I may suggest, is to send one of your big planes. He loves his planes, which lands so promptly, thanks to you. Although he's crashed too. He put a twin-engine Aztec down in a ploughed field in Essex with a seized piston. And then he's got a little Cirrus, you know, the one that's got a parachute on the back?
Yeah.
He ran off the runway, smashed up the front nose. Inquiry. Anyway, I said, send one of your big planes up, and what we'll do is we'll kidnap the team, Peter Moore and all his mates, put them on, we'll take them down to your beachside mansion in Marbella, and we won't let them out till they agree. He said, all right. And who's paying? I said, you're paying. He said, better work. And that's exactly what we did. We took them down there. And the thing is, when those big black eyes concentrate, there is no escape. There is no escape. He was extraordinary. And we sat around a table like this, and there were about 7 of them, and within minutes, they were mapping out the task. What about this? What about that one? They knew they had their man, because he's very charming when he wants to be, when he's concentrating. And he's very creative, and he's on it. And he gets it, and they knew they had their man. It's brilliant. So it worked, my second piece of brilliance. And then we took them to Malaga, stuck them on the plane, just as they were getting in, or about to close the door actually, Peter Moore stuck his head out and said, what about your advisors? Nick would do. And Nick said, no, Nick wouldn't do actually. Thank you. Go away. And they flew off, but I made a terrible mistake. I'd agreed to stay on for a little holiday. And no more dangerous place to be when you're with him on his turf, excuse me, just him and Lady Sugar and about 40 staff. When he wants you to do something you don't want to do. And I was there on my own, unprotected. I put up a manful display for about 3 years. He said, you're a wimp, that's your trouble. I said to him the other day, got no backbone. I said, it's nothing to do with that really, it's just I don't think it's appropriate. And then he went on and on and on, got irritable, so I'm getting aggressive. And I had no car or anything. I mean, how was I to get to the airport? I need to make a run for it. And he said, I don't know what's... He said, I don't understand what the problem is. I'll go and negotiate the fee for you. Of course, this was so beautifully ironic. For years, I've been trying to get an extra 1 or 2% extra for the following year. Just cost of living increase, without ever getting an extra penny. And here he was going in to negotiate the fee with the BBC, which he still does. He rang me up, he said, oh Nick, I think I've done quite a good deal for you this year. I had nothing to do with that. Brilliant, really. Anyway, so there we are. That's what happened. I said, I'm all right. I broke down in tears. I said, I'll do it. And I said, what about the woman? She said, Margaret. I said, come on, Alan. She is one of the most powerful women lawyers in the city. He said, she's retired. I said, oh, right, okay. She was in. The Blessed Margaret was in. And the 3 of us went into this thing. We had no idea what we were doing. We had not a clue. And I think in a sense that's why it worked. Because we're not actors. We're not, we just, it just worked. And it was a great format. Sugar is brilliant. And Margaret, of course, has been ripped from my grasp. Embraced, even. I've got her back. in a way. But the vacancy created by her departure has been amply filled by Karen Brady, of course, whose blouse buttons, I once told her, were a tribute to British stitching. I believe that to be true. Probably from Scotland. Anyway, she's back, she's there, and it's an extraordinary... Are we proud of this thing? Absolutely proud of it. People say, oh, bloody extent. We are very proud of it. Sugar did it because he wanted to teach young people about business. Now, the truth of the matter is, it works. You will say, are you seriously telling me those are Britain's greatest business books? And I would say not necessarily. If you do want Britain's brightest people, you would go to the, I don't know, London Business School, SIDE, Business School in Oxford or wherever, and you get brilliant people, but perhaps maybe Chinese, all clutching some obscure Hungarian economic theory. Nobody would understand a bloody word there. Brilliant, but nobody would understand what they're talking about. And the commissioning editor would be drawn from his office and led very, very quietly to a wall and shot, because it would be on BBC 17 at 3 in the morning because 6 people were watching it. It's about numbers, it's about volume. And if you want to teach, you know, it really be you go for the numbers. And what's so wonderful about the magic of this is there's a bloke sitting on a squashy sofa in Sunderland who hasn't got a job and he's clutching a can of Stella, and there's another one in Plymouth, and there's another one all over the country. There are families watching and people who maybe haven't got a job, aren't working, who can quite reasonably say, don't be stupid, don't do that, I could do better than that. And that is the magic. If you get the brilliant people, you lose your audience. And we're pulling, as I said, 6.75 last night, and we get another 3, that's 10 million. And that is about 40%, I think, of viewing public, something like that, maybe 37 something. And it's about the volume. It's about the volume. And I know, because I go to schools, and it's not bullshit, I go to school. I went to the Elephant and Castle not that long ago, girls' school, very deprived area, huge ethnic minority audience of girls in their uniforms, glued and just wanting to talk about the tasks. They didn't give a damn that so-and-so was fit, or Katie Walsh had world-class teeth and a perfect haircut. They weren't interested. They wanted to know why so-and-so hadn't dropped the price at 3:30 and moved the whole thing to Covent Garden instead of hanging around in, you know, some other place, part of London. So they really are captivated. And I took all the prefects out from the school in Cheltenham for dinner, I don't know, because my daughter works at the school, I think. Reflection. Anyway, I said, how many of you guys are starting a business in school? They all put their hands up. Business is fascinating for kids now, and that is the real truth. Kids love it. And I don't know how many parents there are here that watch The Apprentice with their kids, even as young as 8, 9 years old. Little kids are running apprentice schemes at school, so it's working in that sense. What's Karen's job? What's my job? I'll tell you, the misery of our job is to chase around after those characters. And I ask you whether in 69, 17th February, 17th February, whether you would want for 3 days to chase 8 people around, noting absolutely everything they say. Was it true? What was the reaction? Was the reaction true? What is such and such? And they're all talking at once. Why have we got to do this? He's back in the office, only another million. We're having some gutter picnic in Hackney. And then comes the time when, on the boardroom day, when we've got to go and debrief him, he sits there like a little, but sort of an absorbent Buddha, and we've got to dump all this stuff on him, notebooks on him, and tell him everything that happened over the last 3 days, and he wants to know everything. He just wants to know everything. And he sits there with one piece of A4 paper, portrait, with a line down the middle. He said, Nick, I do wish it would be more accurate. Karen said it happened at 2:43. You say it was 2:52. Which was it? What was it? I said, I don't know. He said, well, make sure you make a note of it, Karen. Murder. And then we might spend 3 hours in there so that at the end of it he knows everything. He's got everything done on one piece. And then he says, leave me. And we sort of back out. go back to it. We have fruit bowls in our dressing rooms. There it's like Hollywood. Anyway, we go back there, and he sits there, and then we go down to this boardroom, which is a place of abject terror. And there are 6 cameras behind us, and there are 3 in the mirror behind the candidates, and there's 1 in the roof. No scripts. It's nothing like that. You're on your own, mate. And so the candidates, they leave all their wheelie bins outside, cases, bins, whatever you want. And they come in. I think, oh no, not another one. Because we've now got, Alan comes in, and it's his boardroom. And our job really is just to keep it on rails. So when they start lying, we can pick them up. And his job really is to just to, get the best out of them. Before going down, we would have said, Alan, the blonde man or woman, honestly, dim as a clock age lamp, that one. And the producers will also have said, the blonde not performing terribly well for the cameras. Then he goes mad. The blonde will go when the blonde deserves to go, because it's a very honest programme. It's not for the telly. In other words, you don't want to fire somebody because, it's tactical. They deserve the best. And we deserve to make sure they're properly represented, which is why we scribble everything down. Not just so that we don't get our heads bitten off, but because these kids deserve to be properly, represented and honestly represented. They put their lives on the stage. Their characters, my God, their egos on the line, for weeks on end, for 3 days. And so we all take it very seriously. And he then will bite the head off the producer and say, how dare you tell me how to do this? It's a very honest programme. And in all those years, the 100 and, I don't know what it was, that we've had passed around, only 2 have ever said they were unfairly edited. Okay? So, it's a very honest thing. It's a very honest thing. And he teased them up. We're terrified, of course, of saying something that will disrupt his line of attack. And if you do, you get a very sharp kick on the ankle. Fed up with it, actually. And, and then I know when things are coming to a head, because there's a slight panting to my right. I go, whoa. So we're there, are we? And then out comes the stubby finger. Bang, you're fired, which is in the contract, of course. They tried it in Japan, and the Japanese said, we can't say you're fired. We are prepared to say, you must seek opportunities elsewhere. It's not really quite the same, is it? Anyway, so the final 3 there, and the blonde's there, and I think, whoa, gosh, we got it right, I knew. And then he starts to work on the final 3, and his great task now as a cross-examining barrister is to make them all look equally culpable. And so all the blokes on their squashy sofas all over this great land of ours, clutching Stella Artois. Not Stella Artois. Yeah, Stella. Is it wife beater they call it? They're all saying, oh, I don't know, he's going to fire. And that is it. So it must never be obvious. More or less pretty much always gets it right. And off they go, bang, and they're out, and thank you so much for the opportunity. And at the end of it, we've got to like them, the last ones. We keep our distance, we don't let them suck up to us. One tried it with Margaret, nearly got left hook. That's a lovely fragrance, Margaret. She growled at it and went back for a hook, and he, outside actually. Anyway, out they go, and we'll sometimes go out to see how they are. So they've gone out, and there's a camera in the Andrew, they pick up their wheelie bin, and it goes off to a taxi. There's a crew in the taxi. That's tough, and they're lying on the floor sobbing. Not because they've been fired, but because they're out of the process. It is such an intense, life-changing thing for them, and off they go. And God bless them. And some of them have become very good friends. Syra Khan, does a lot on television for kids. They're good people. The tasks, fantastic. Well, the thing is, they're tough. They've got no time. Who remembers Pants Man? The ridiculous serial thing. Pants Man, for God's sake. And we all go, oh, Pants Man. Idiot. The thing is, the winning one was Captain Squawk, which was brilliant. The advertising agency, my God, they did that in 3 days. I'd have had a whole division on that for 3 months and they wouldn't have done it. So there is real talent there. It's just that the pressure they're under makes them make mistakes. And there's a bit of playing up to the camera and all this too, but there we are. So, yes, we're proud of it. It's tough. It's very, very tough. When they all arrive, of course, they're searched by ex-army people. Their phones are taken, the one in the sock as well. No money, no credit cards. One telephone. The boys have their eyeliner removed. It's tough. One phone call a week for 10 minutes under supervision. This is hard. Of course, it's meant to be hard. It's meant to get them all on edge. But they love it at the end, and nobody gets hurt. And really, it's something that we're really very proud of. Who are the great heroes? I'll tell you who the great heroes are. Well, I don't know who they are actually, except that they're the editors. They wear nylon shirts a lot. They're very pale because they live in windowless rooms, and they're brilliant. And they're given 150 hours to distill down to 1 hour. It takes them 3 months for each program. There are 6 edits which rolling all the time. They're fantastic people. And I think they produce a great show, and we're very proud of it. Next year we go into year 10. Alan Sugar rang me in a rage. He said, for God's sake, don't hint that I might give it up. I shall do it as long as